great guest, Zach, back. We have a
How's it
great
going?
show today.
Jesse,
Yeah.
your audio is not amazing.
I'm sorry. Let me try to.
You think we would have fixed this before the live stream, right? We're talking for like, what, 20 minutes?
Who does that?
How about now?
We value authenticity.
It's still the same.
How about now?
It's still the same.
More or less the same.
Still the same?
It's a little better now.
Maybe a little better. It's not impossible to interpret you, but it sounds like you're like speaking through like a cone.
That's a true interpretation of what it is.
I don't know. I'm
like.
just speaking my truth.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
that's
way better.
Wow.
Okay, well, I'm trying to get all technical, all advanced with it.
You look so professional.
Thank you. But it's not working.
Zach looks even more like a streamer. He's got the full headset.
Yes,
the mic
that
is
is definitely. That's definitely. Zach's definitely got the ensemble.
Yeah.
He's ready to go. Well, guys.
Happy Labor Day, guys. Happy Labor Day.
Happy Labor Day.
Day.
It's a great day in America for progressives and our ideas. And I think that this is what the point of the show today is to have Zach on. And the reason why I'm talking so monotone is because I don't know how my volume's going right now. But the reason why Zach's on the show today is because he's going to break down pretty much the history of the labor movement and the historical perspectives of it. And I myself am really looking forward to it because, I love Labor Day because of the barbecue and the food and the beaches. And, it's like an amazing thing for me. But that's not really the point of the day. The point of the day is because a lot of people walk for the rights that we take for granted right now. I mean, and this is what the show's about. We're gonna dive deep. Zach's gonna give a history. Essentially, how this whole movement even started, and where we're at right now, currently, and where we need to go. Because we're not where we need to be. Women's pay is still not even with men, even to this day. Right. There's still discrepancies among classes in terms of equal pay, fair work. We still have fights about $15 minimum wage. We're still trying to hash out in different sectors.
Right to work laws.
Yes, right to work laws. And so we have a long way to go. But in order for us to move forward, we have to focus on what we've been and what we've done in the past. And that's what Zach's going to present today. And I look forward to the show, and I'm going to pass it to Seth because Seth's got his 2 cents, and let him go.
Well, it's very topical right now because Biden is now basically the most pro-union president possibly in American history, at least in the last 80 years.
At least our lifetimes, right? I mean,
at least our lifetime. I mean, maybe at least since FDR. At least the 40s,
Why do you make that statement?
Since the progressive era, I think he's the most pro-union president.
It's a pretty fair statement. There's been a lot of, pushing unions to the side when it comes to politics and American history. We've been a very pro-business country, not a very pro-worker country. You can kind of see it on graphs in accordance to worker pay. We are one of the most unequal countries in the developing world, or the developed, I should say, not the developing.
Right.
Yeah, we got a very wealthy, very high GDP, so much growth, so much economic freedom, but yet workers are we had the same minimum wage we had when George Bush was president, so.
Right. So we like democracy whenever it's in the government, but whenever workers want to have democracy in their workplace,
I don't know that we like democracy in the government though.
Right. No, that's why it's democracy, right?
Yeah.
So I guess Seth and Jesse brought me back on today because I'm a history major at Mississippi State University. So I know a decent bit about history, but I didn't have time to dive into the primary sources today to look at this stuff. So this is by no means academic or whatever. Like I still don't have my degree yet, so I'm definitely no like expert by any means. But
It's a
unions
little
have been
academic, just not like
right. It's based
his-
on a fact and reality is what I'm trying to say.
true.
So
Something
basically,
anybody could prove if they dived in deep enough,
right. Just quick Wikipedia search, and verify it because they link the sources, right? Whatever. So basically, before unions like really like took hold in America, there were a lot of like shitty business practices done by big giant corporations. Because at that point these monopolies were rampant, things like that. They were imposing really bad working conditions on their employees. Things like working their workers past 8 hours a day.
An
I
8-hour
think
day is something that was like unheard of.
done by unions. That's right.
Labor
Yeah.
rights. Yeah. It was the standard.
But
Nobody was
also
expected.
right. But also things like at a certain point during that time period, there were the average work week for the employee was 100 hours, right? That's insane. So there was also less restrictions on child labor. There were children working in the mines, like there were children working in very 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 poor working conditions. There was no minimum wage. People were working for piss poor wages. There were things like company towns where like and there still were even after unions were first enacted or first really sort of took a rise in American history. But yeah, like they're paying their employees like very very low, or like even just credit to the company store, or even just hey, you can keep living here, stuff like that, which is basically slavery. But I don't even know why I'm saying basically it is slavery.
Yeah. Or at least indentured servitude.
Right. Thankfully, none of that exists anymore. At least not to any like
not
large
in the United
extent.
States, at least.
Right. Things like company towns no longer exist thanks to unions, right? So unions made things like the 8-hour work week possible, things like the minimum wage possible, things like having weekends off, thanks to unions. Also, Labor Day is a big reason, a big impact on unions, right? So like the history of Labor Day kind of goes like this. So the first ever pro-union laws or anti-union busting laws was done in Canada. And they liked to celebrate this day, September 5th. And that's what we now know as Labor Day, which is the first Saturday of every September. And basically what it was is these pro-union, I guess they were union workers, but they were, protesting, and they wanted to march into New York from Toronto, and they did. And it inspired sort of this revival of unions in America. There's this very influential guy in New York City that I'm actually blanking on the name of right now. See, like I'm not, but yeah, they decided like we're gonna protest every single September 5th, and either they're gonna fire us, or either we're going to march out here without pay, or we're going to quit our jobs. Like they were protesting for poor working or against poor working conditions in their workplaces. And they won some very very good gains. And we definitely still have like a very long way to go, but I think Labor Day is a great way of like looking back at the contributions that unions have made throughout American history, like for American workers, but also the work that needs to be done. There are things like I said in the introduction that like right to work laws that make it impossible for unions to functionally organize in states like Mississippi, states like Alabama, stuff like that. So we need to pass the PRO Act, which is another reason why you guys are saying that Joe Biden is like the most pro-union president in maybe American history, but definitely in our lifetimes.
It is a low bar.
Right. This is a very, very low bar, and there are a lot of things Joe Biden does that I absolutely disagree with. Like he hasn't really fulfilled on a lot of his campaign promises, but compared to his predecessor, compared to the alternative, which is Trump, this is cool. He's doing good stuff for unions. That's great. Yeah, that's kind of
at this point. The stuff that Biden has done, or at least has tried to do, but has been held up in Congress. It's understandable, but there's stuff that he could do, which I still think he's going to do, and is literally saving it for like moments before the election, like the recently rescheduled cannabis to like Schedule 3 or Schedule 4 or something like that.
Yeah, definitely not even close to the bare minimum. But
Yeah.
an improvement nonetheless, right?
An
I would
improvement.
rather it, and I guess the theory behind, and this is totally off topic, right? But I guess the theory behind like scheduling marijuana from 1 to 3 or like lower than one is like you can now research it where like Schedule 1 drugs are not allowed to be researched on the federal level, which could pave the way for finding out more of the effects on it and making state legislatures feel, or even Congress feel better about legalizing it, which we should have done decades ago, which is what Joe
Yeah.
Biden has promised to do and hasn't done. But this is at least a step in that direction, which is better than the
It's at
alternative.
least better than like Ron DeSantis, who literally
Yes.
has weed illegal in Florida because he just doesn't like the smell. That's
Or
literally
like Trump, who thinks that drug dealers should like be
Be
murdered
executed.
by the state. Like way better than the alternative for sure.
and wants to start
Yeah.
war with Russia just because they're bringing drugs over. The cartels. I said Russia. I meant Mexico.
Right.
You know, start war. Like it's a consensus in the Republican Party to start war with Mexico. It's kind of
They
ridiculous.
love it. They really love that.
But
So one of the things that I was reading up on was kind of in 1935 they came out with the National Labor Relations Act. I'm not too, you guys too familiar with that, but that was kind of like the predecessor to allowing unions to be formed in America, right? And so one of the questions I had was, what led up to that? So from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, but a lot of it really stemmed from Teddy Roosevelt, which was a conservative
definitely.
Republican who kind of led and paved that wave to essentially start bringing some of these reforms in, because these, like you guys saying, these fat cats were kind of monopolizing an industry and kind of making unfair practices. Not to throw anybody under the bus, but the T model, Ford, and
I mean,
all these
definitely throw
different.
Ford under the bus. I mean, he's not really
Yeah.
somebody worth any sort of admiration.
No, well, yeah, Ford and you
Rockefeller, the JP
Rockefeller,
Morgan, the
JP
giant
Morgan. So,
conglomerates of the early 1900s. I would say,
Yeah.
as far as like presidencies go, I would definitely credit Teddy Roosevelt. I would say though that the origins of the labor movements would definitely stem from somebody like William Bryan Jennings. He was like Democratic nominee like 3 times in a row in like the late
Mhm.
1800s. Because prior to that point, liberalism in the United States was purely classical liberalism. They had like laissez-faire economics. And that's what drives me insane is Republicans who act as if all of the policies that they're suggesting have not already been tried and failed and led to massive, like, obvious holes in like the economic system. Like
Yeah.
people like Grover Cleveland, who, he had certain things that were very good about him. He was a classical liberal, but his policies also led to like economic turmoil and led to just consolidation of the market, because if there's no regulations over like these giant corporations and all these moneyed interests, they're just going to corner the market. You're not going to have a free market after like 1 year. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A free market can't sustain itself. And by free, I would mean like, free for everybody, not just unregulated. That's the problem. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just saying free markets doesn't take the human perspective into place. It's
Right.
more of that's the biggest issue with it.
It's very utopian.
I don't necessarily think that unions are anti-free market, and I think this is a very
Absolutely
important thing to have. Like a lot of people will like to equate unions with socialism, and it's basically just Red Scare propaganda that's just regurgitated just to make sure that workers don't have human rights.
Yeah, it's just a good way for the bourgeoisie, the business owners to, scare away unions from forming so that they don't have to negotiate wages.
Right, and you can have a totally free market. You can have complete capitalism and still have unions because they're not contrary to free market capitalism. In fact, a lot of libertarian capitalists will say that actually it's totally within the free market for workers to combine together and freely associate and negotiate with their boss for better working conditions and better pay. Like that's totally a free market thing to do. So yeah.
I mean, free market capitalism is just like the private ownership of private or of enterprise. It doesn't necessarily mean they can do whatever they want, completely control and bust. And there's also freedom of association in the United States. And that's
Right.
something that they also should not have the right to infringe upon.
It's
You
what
know
a
what I
lot
mean?
of anti-union people say they support, which is kind of
Yeah.
ironic.
Which is ridiculous, of course, because they're like, "Oh, you voluntarily joined this job, so we can do whatever we want."
Right.
It's
You
like,
should have the right to work, which just means that the government is picking the side of bosses in labor disputes. Right. You know, right to work laws are where the government steps in and says that workers, when they're in a union, cannot negotiate with their boss a condition that requires membership of a union as a
yeah,
requirement for employment. And that's not to say like there aren't businesses in non-right to work states that are not union. That there are, right? Union membership is actually very, very, very low. But what it does is it allows unions to properly organize, because when you have a condition where your boss can hire around you, you do not have the ability to organize, right? Your
Mhm.
boss, you know, whenever you have a strike, can just replace you just like that with no consequences,
Yeah,
right?
there's a
Because
completely disproportionate amount of power in the small people that decide everything for a company.
right,
When everybody that contributes and produces and creates the value of a company has absolutely no say in what happens, and they are completely exploited, because otherwise they have to find a better job or a different job, which is just going to have the exact same institutional problems as the job they're currently at, because it's a systemic problem. It's not just
right.
this is one bad workplace. It's like every single workplace is organized in the same hierarchy, and they can get
Right.
away with it because they just say, "Hey, why can't I take advantage of my workers like this? This other company is doing it too. It's the way of America. It's a free enterprise. Yada yada yada." So
Right. Well, also, what are the punishments, right? Like, if, say, for example, your boss is caught strike busting, or they're, you know, illegally firing you for trying to start a union, which businesses do all the time and go away with it scot free. The worst that can happen, right? And this is if you're caught. This is if the National Labor Relations Board is not, you know, scrapped like it was under the Trump administration. Um, things like that. But the worst that can happen, you know, the very, very worst, is you have to rehire the person you fired for trying to
yeah,
start a union or trying to join the union. Um, and you just have to pay back pay. Minus, if that worker found a new job, you don't have to pay that money subtracted from the money you would have made in your job that you got fired from illegally. It's insane how like our government takes the side so heavily on labor disputes, takes the boss's side rather than working
which is a
people.
good transition into literally the reason why we were mentioning Joe Biden is the National Labor Relations Board has just
Yes,
ruled, like, instead of corporations siding with or government siding with corporations when it comes to, you know, strike or labor busting, union busting rather, now they have to like file like a dispute, like to challenge the formation of the union instead of automatically busting them. They have to, like, you know, give reason for it, and instead of automatically a union being the one that has to start the dispute and be like, "Hey, this is not fair. My
right.
union got busted and shut down." Now they're automatically siding with labor
Right.
inherently, so it's a cemented institution now, which has
I
never been the case.
Yeah, I think the best person that describes this the most eloquently and you know, concise is Kyle Kalinske. He talks about this all the time. This idea like of pledge cards being just the minimum you need to form a union, unless
Yeah.
the boss can find a legitimate reason to contest the validity of these pledge cards. It's so significant, and it definitely you know, limits the power imbalance of a employer-employee relationship when it comes to forming a union, right? Because what's a business's number one goal, right? Make as much profit as possible and limit the cost to as little as possible.
Yeah.
And a wage is just a cost, right? That's not to say there aren't business owners that are very kind to their employees, that you know, have good benefits, and pay well, but a lot of those businesses are union employed. But that's besides the point, right? So the idea of the National Labor Relations Board, you know, decision is now, instead of the current system that we have, where you do get the pledge cards from a certain number of employees of the business and then present it to your boss. The boss can contest it, right? And that's all he has to do. The burden of proof is on the union to then go and complain to the National Labor Relations Board, which can then start an election, right? And what happens between the time of pledge cards, election declared, and then election finalized? There's this few month long period where a boss in a lot of these states that have right to work laws can force you while you're on the clock to come to mandatory anti-union propaganda meetings. They can manipulate ballot boxes, or like they control where the ballot boxes are so they can make them as inconvenient as possible. There have been some union busting corporations, particularly ones like Amazon and Starbucks that have been caught, like particularly Amazon, that have been caught like manipulating the actual ballot boxes themselves. Like they've been caught doing it, nothing's happened. So basically what happens now is, instead of that corrupt system, which makes it very, very, very easy to union bust, what happens is all a union has to do, or an employee workplace, that all they have to do to start a union is say, here are these pledge cards, and it's on the boss to then find a legitimate reason to contest the results of or the validity of these pledge cards, which they can do. And if the National Labor Relations Board feels that there's legitimate reason, then they can call for an election. But it just makes it very, very, very harder, because now the onus is on the boss, right? And the thing is, not all these bosses are going to be educated on this kind of thing. And so the workers don't have to let the boss know, oh, by the way, you have to contest this or we are unionized. They can just say, okay, and then walk away. It's on the employer to then call up the National Labor Relations Board to, call for an election. If not, automatically after a certain time period, you now have a union, which is fucking awesome for workers' rights.
Yeah.
Because in unions advocate for better working conditions, better pay. And you can actually compare, right, the right to work states with the non-right to work states, and the pay and working conditions is the math is just the math. It's a lot better.
I lived in Florida and I've lived in California, and I can tell you that it is a completely different work-life balance.
Right.
I make literally like twice as much money too.
Right.
And it's not, not like the businesses are any less successful in California. Come on, guys. It is like the third largest economy in the entire world. So it's not like these are really hurting businesses. It's just preventing wealth consolidation at the very top. Because like this isn't a dispute necessarily between bosses and workers. It's between employed people and shareholders. People that work at the companies. These are people that have no real vested interest other than like they've never set foot inside of the companies that they owned. They don't know how to run the companies that they own. They're not business majors. They haven't worked in the industry. They literally are just have money, and their money makes them money. So that gives them the right to control your entire life, tell you your own rights as a human being, and how you spend your time, and how the amount of money is allocated towards you. This is a power we grant towards the property owning class. And it is the idea that laissez-faire is about freedom, or unregulated, like let's have unlimited freedom. No, of course it's not about freedom. It's about power. It's about unregulated power. And it's an obviously unfree concept to have no regulations on the amount of power an individual can have over another individual. That is the definition of an unfree society. That is a privileged society. That is not a society where everybody has equal opportunity and freedom, which is obviously the real goal of a free society. Everybody has the opportunity to compete with one another based on their merit, not based on the families they were born into, the neighborhoods that they lived in, the schools that they were able to go to because they can afford it, and the connections that they have because they are all white men. You know what I mean? These are imbalances that are not protected in a natural state.
Yeah, the old social order. I totally agree with you, Seth. I think that I want to chime in a little bit with Hillbilly Jim Pond's questions.
Yeah, we should probably.
Um, yeah, he brought up a good point. So, what do you guys see the role of AI in this new labor discussions and these
Good
new
question.
labor agreements? Because he makes a good point where he says that workers would be obsolete in a lot of cases thanks to automation and AI. And I agree with him because I believe that there is going to replace a lot of labor for a lot of companies. Like Zach was saying earlier, it's about cutting costs,
Hmm.
and they're going to try and automation and AI allows them to do that. So, what do you see labor negotiating and possibly striking that balance with the profit-minded, laissez-faire companies with human rights, workers and what their rights are in this AI world that we're in?
I think I can see there's a lot of situations in which workers would try to prevent automation. You know what I mean, and prevent progress in certain ways to preserve their current jobs.
Hmm.
And I don't think that that's necessarily the path forward. I think automation is inevitable, and it's the best way for us to compete against other countries that are already automating their workplaces. And I think there's obviously things we need to do to transition our economy into the next stage of
Hmm.
this new industrial revolution or whatever. Like it's obvious that whatever jobs are lost during this are going to be replaced by completely new industries, and people have more time. I think it's going to be a lot more entertainment, a lot more like streamers, like this kind of shit. Like people have more free time, so they really pursue the things that they are interested in.
Hmm.
I think that's the way forward. And I don't think it's a bad thing if we lose coal mining jobs because of automation or something like that. Like, I don't think that's a bad thing. I can see a lot of workers having problems with that. I think that the solution is obviously, government programs that, protect you if you do lose your job or your job becomes obsolete. Stuff like universal basic income and stuff, unemployment insurance, job placement, some things like higher education, so you can actually go after a job that's more set towards your skill set instead of like, this is what I've been doing for the last 30 years. You know what I mean? I just mined coal because it was the job that was offered to me because I didn't graduate high school. Like, these people are stuck in shitty jobs because they don't have real skill sets, because they haven't had educational opportunities. And like, people don't have opportunities to pursue things when they're stuck at a job that pays them just little enough that they have to maximize their hours so that they can pay rent. Just that's kind of like the trap, the wage slavery trap that our system is set, where they pay you just enough where you don't literally die, and like just little enough that they can maximize profits. It's not a very good system because it prevents actual freedom, actual personal agency in your life, where you have a purpose in your life, and you're meant to do something. Everybody has a passion. Everybody wants to do something, and most people kind of give up on their dreams just to pay the bills. Most people would be better off if they were in something. Our entire economy was so much better if everybody who's best at if everybody's able to do the thing that they are best at. If that's the most skilled workplace we could think of, that would be the most efficient system we could think of. If doctors who people wanted to save lives and were very smart and capable, they were able to become doctors instead of having to spend all this time working for absolutely no money, like going $100,000 into debt while they work as a nurse's assistant, getting paid like absolute bare minimum. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of systems that would be a lot better off if you didn't have to go so far into debt just to achieve a higher market value. So more educational or more economic opportunity is really the solution to automation. Because if you have more flexibility, it's not really an issue if you lose this one job. Because if your entire life relies on you keeping this one job, then it is obviously a dangerous thing for automation. Because we're going to have a lot of people who have no more meaning and no more opportunities, and they're just going to end up on the streets, just like lots of people in the cities that I live near. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So what do you? Yeah, I agree with you, Seth. I mean, I think that automation. Sorry, I can't pronounce that word
Automation.
right. Automation. Thank you.
There
I
you
keep
go.
saying automation. Um, automation is one of those things where it is driving. It will create opportunity in terms of intellectual property and people's ideas and what they see the future of their personal goals and aspiration. But then there is a devil side to that where it's going to limit, you know, certain aspects of labor negotiations and labor talks. When we look at the ability now, these companies have the ability to replace 3 or 4 workers with a machine. It limits your negotiation power in reality. And I think that, I mean, this is going to be funny, but I saw this thing where it was a rap or it was like a speech Biden gave, and they did it through, I think, ChatGPT. And then they were able to create the speech that was completely Republican. And like it's like viral on TikTok. I say that because if that has the ability to do that, I can't imagine what the abilities can you program a system to do to automate. I'm in the legal profession, so usually how the legal world works is you have an attorney, you have a paralegal, then you have a legal assistant, and that's kind of the hierarchy of the law office. But what ends up happening is now you have something like ChatGPT, which essentially says, "Yeah, I've written this motion like 5 times already. All I needed to do is just change the names, and I just tell this computer, it's like, hey, take this motion and change the names on them, and then there it is. So I just got rid of an assistant's job because that's what a system would do. She would take the same motion, she would change the parties. But if the computer can do it, why would I pay someone $15? That computer could just do for me that I pay one time for $99. And people seeing this through every single industries and every single sector where this chat GPT thing or just AI in general is being implemented into their workforce and they're being replaced. And so the jobs that are paying $25, and I was like, yeah, we don't really need to pay you that because we can automate that. And I just wanted to know what you guys think. Like, how does this actually affect the labor negotiations going on? And another example would be I see I think it's called correct me if I'm wrong. It's the writers strike. I think it's called SAG. I
Yeah,
can't
the
think of
site.
the SAG. Yeah.
Then
And so
Actors Guild. I don't remember what the S
yeah.
is.
So their biggest issue is the fact that their streaming is getting so huge and they're pushing out so many products, but the revenue it's the same or getting less
Yeah,
than they were getting paid originally. And big companies, big media companies are just like, well, that's just the reality of the world we're in right now. In order for us to be profitable, we have to put out a lot of content, and then you guys are going to see reduced incomes. And really, what's happening is, from what I see, and I'm outside looking in, is that they're really losing their bargaining chips because AI programs can now start writing scripts. Imagine you can take 1,000 scripts that's written in the past shows, right? You
yeah,
put it into the system, and then you can just start like, these are the most good ones, and you can start writing out scripts for people, and then they just lose a whole bunch of writers. A writing room that had like 15 people, you only need like 2 writers, and so I find it interesting, and I feel like that's like the new fight for labor forces. How do we tackle this technology? So it was technology solutions, but then there's also like to every solution there's a negative drawback. And so, what do you guys think?
yeah. I mean, right now, I don't think it's a major issue today, but I think if we see how quickly ChatGPT is affecting things, like AI is going to come exponentially. And it's going to take over our lives in like the next decade. Like it's going to be everything. And I think it's unpredictable. I think regulation is an obvious solution for the transition period, at least. Like we need to do something about employers completely. I don't know. I'm not personally against art being written by AI. Like art is something to be enjoyed by consumers, and obviously we need to protect the people in the industry too.
Yeah.
But I'm not one to say like it's an evil idea of like, oh, shows are written by AI. So now if it's good, it's good. If people like it,
Right.
they're consuming.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't think it's really going to be able to replace the human perspective. You know what I mean? I think that's something that's pretty obvious. Like,
I mean,
go ahead.
No. You keep finish your thought. My bad.
Oh, I was just going to say, I don't remember. I'm ADHD. Go ahead.
Sorry, my bad. I think you're almost done.
You're good.
So it's fine.
It wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I think every time I hear the word ChatGPT, all I think of like is Chris Christie on the debate stage saying that Vivek Ramaswamy sounds like ChatGPT. But I mean, aside from like all the doom and gloom, sorry.
I said he kind of does.
Yeah, he kind of does. Yeah, no, there's merit to the debate attack for sure.
Maybe he wrote his speeches with ChatGPT. That wouldn't shock me.
I mean, yeah, it sounds a lot like Chat. It's no actual real solution, just kind of like all the buzzwords. But no, regardless, I think
buzzwords. Don't forget to smile.
Don't forget the smile. Oh wow.
Yeah.
So it's not all doom and gloom. You know, it's not all like bad stuff happening for unions. You know, like the reason for Labor Day is like celebrate the gains that we've made. And I think recently we've seen definitely a huge resurgence in union membership. You know, more people joining a union, more unions forming. An actual discussion about getting rid of some of these right to work laws. Joe Biden openly telling Congress to pass the PRO Act. And he'll sign it as soon as he can, like as soon as he gets to his desk.
Yeah.
Things like that are becoming, normalized, right? Like even, like liberals and capitalists and stuff like that are now admitting like, hey, actually unions are a good thing. And
I think even conservatives are.
Right. A workforce.
The difference between the Tea Party movements and even there's a lot of problems with the Trump populist movement, but they at least perceive themselves as pro-worker. You know what I mean? And I think that's a good thing for labor unions.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think a lot of that is like fake. They'll say, I'm in favor of unions organizing, all this kind of stuff.
For politicians, it's definitely fake.
It's part of the free market, but then they advocate for upholding right to work laws. So they want to keep it. They want to keep it nearly impossible for workers to organize in a lot of these states. They're not actually pro-worker. They're not actually pro-union.
Maybe it's pretty niche to the people I'm talking to on Twitter, but there's definitely a lot of like pro-worker Republicans like that now exist.
I don't doubt it.
And there's a lot more socially conservative, but there's at least a movement within the Republican Party, even if it's not even remotely a majority, where I mean it didn't exist before. You know what I mean? And now both parties are having to cater to their populist based. So I don't know. I can see it's a positive trajectory.
Yeah. There's definitely reason to celebrate. We still have a long way to go, but Labor Day, we should definitely celebrate. I was seeing some kind of controversy where there was some like radical socialists that are like, remember, fuck Labor Day, May Day's better. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. Like, what are you? You're not doing anything about like complaining on Twitter. Like, what are you?
Labor Day. The Twitter radical socialists are just contrarian, anyways.
Labor Day is more widely accepted in America.
Yeah.
Labor Day is an American holiday. Not May Day is not. True patriots support our American unions, and they and they celebrate Labor Day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Go for it. Sorry.
No, I was just gonna say. I mean, I think you guys are 100% right about the points of us celebrating our movement, in America, because the laws affect us here in America. So I totally agree with you guys. I mean, I want to say that historically, and I could be wrong. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Historically, most major legislation that passed in favor of labor is usually done through an economic downturn. Usually,
because it really radicalizes voters into thinking that there's something dramatic that needs to be changed. While regular people, normal times, happy times, people are more conservative because they're more afraid of, things are fine now. What if things change makes things worse off. So
Mhm.
people are a lot more like desperate in those times for anything positive.
Yeah, and so I'm just thinking like now we're kind of right now in an economic standstill. We're not doing too bad, but we're not doing great either.
It's true.
So I wonder a lot of the legislation that President Joe Biden is going to try to pass, is it going to have enough fire to get through the chambers? Because it's not really no one really seeing an economic downturn right now. And that's what I'm mostly concerned about. And do you think he does something prior to the election to try to get those last minute voters out?
Right. Have y'all heard his speech today?
I have not heard.
I saw it. I didn't hear it.
Okay, y'all want to? Can y'all play like a clip on YouTube of it, like just a short little
Sure.
clip?
I think you should be able to share your screen, right? I don't know.
My internet is really bad, but I can try to do that.
Oh, I can look it up. Let's see.
Let me.
Well, I mean, I don't know what you're trying to play because I haven't seen.
Send us the link so we could probably do it.
Is there
send us
like a
the link to-
specific part you're trying to play?
Well, no, there's a few like short little clips, like 4 minute long, that we
Okay,
can
let's see,
easily
let's see.
watch.
There.
Like I'm looking at this
Anyways.
one by NBC News. It's like 4 minutes.
That's the first thing that came up.
All right, NBC News.
Yeah.
You got it. Awesome.
Here, I got you. We'll do it. Let's see. Give good old Joe Brandon a chance to speak.
Dark Brandon.
Oh shit! Oh, I just deleted it. Oh my god.
Here, I can do it.
No, I just
Gotcha.
accidentally clicked on X.
Guys, this is totally a part of the show. We totally planned this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, there we go. Oh, what? It was there.
Let's do it again.
You want me to do it? I can
now.
do it.
He got it. Zacky Attacky.
All right, here we go. I'm not sure if I can full screen it, but
You should be able to. Oh, I have to give you permission.
can y'all see this full screen?
You can now.
Got it. Yeah, we can.
I told you I'd have your back, and I have. You know, there are a lot of politicians in this country who don't know how to say the word union. They talk about labor. They don't say union. It's
Damn
union.
right.
I'm one of them. I'm proud to say union. I'm proud to be the most pro-union president, according to the experts in American history. And and by the way, I make no bones about that. Folks, in this Labor Day, let me tell you what we're celebrating. We're celebrating jobs, good-paying jobs, jobs you can raise a family on, union jobs. You've heard me say it before, but my dad used to have an expression, I swear to God. He'd say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck, for real. It's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say, it's going to be okay, and mean it when you say it. And he was right. And I'm determined to make that a reality for every family in this country. And we are making it a reality. Nearly 13,500,000 jobs just since you got me sworn in January of 2020.
2021, but yeah.
Yeah.
800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But you wouldn't know from all the negative news you hear. But we're getting through this, one of the greatest job creation periods in American history. For real, that's a fact. And you know, it wasn't that long ago we were losing jobs in this country. In fact, the guy who held this job before me was just one of 2 presidents in history. He was but here's an important point, one of 2 presidents in history that left office with fewer jobs in America than when he got elected office. By the way, you know who the other one was? Herbert Hoover. Isn't that kind of coincidental? Look, we're turning things around because of you.
Actually, it's such good comedic
When the last
delivery.
guy was here, you were shipping jobs to China. Now we're bringing jobs home from China. When the last guy was here, your pensions were at risk. We helped save millions of pensions with your help. When the last guy was here, he looked at the world from Park Avenue. I look at it from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I look at it from Claymont, Delaware. Not a joke.
Not a
You
joke.
can't have the strongest economy in the world with a second-rate infrastructure. Can you believe we used to have the best infrastructure in the world, and then we fell to number 13 in the world? Roads, bridges, internet, the whole deal. 13.
The whole deal,
United
Jack.
States
The whole
America,
deal.
13th in the world. And guess what? Guess what? The great real estate builder, the last guy here, he didn't build a damn thing. Under my predecessor, Infrastructure Week became a punchline. On my watch, infrastructure has been a decade and it's a headline. Let me tell you, America's best days are ahead of us. They're ahead of us, not behind us. It's about the future. This is about the future. And Lee, I can honestly say, I've been doing this a long while, but I've never been more optimistic about America's future. We just have to remember who we are. We are the United States of America. There's nothing beyond our capacity if we work together. So God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. You're the best. You're the best.
Hell yeah. God protects our troops, damn it.
Bible Belt,
It is.
lesbian bars.
Wow.
No, but seriously, like
That's what was
wow,
on the
this
middle of the screen.
I love a lot of this speech, but there's like my favorite line. Where is it?
Day before with my dad jobs about for real. It's about your dignity. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say it's going to be okay and mean it when you say it. And he was right. And I'm determined to make that a reality for every family in this 15,520 job. We're getting more union president according to the experts about in American history. And by the way, I make no bones about that. Folks, in this Labor Day, let me tell you what we're celebrating. We're celebrating jobs. Jobs you can raise a family on, union jobs. Expression, I swear to God, he'd say, Joey, a job's about a lot more than a paycheck, for real. It's about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about being able to look your kid in the eye and say it's going to be okay and mean it when you say it. And he was right. And I'm determined to make that a reality for every family in this country.
I forgot where it was.
And
I'm
we
sorry.
are making it a reality. Nearly 13,500,000 jobs just since you got me sworn in January of 2020. 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But you wouldn't know from all the negative news you hear.
That's the line.
But
You wouldn't know from all the negative news you hear, man. Wouldn't know. You would have no idea that Joe Biden is doing so much good for American workers if you watch like Fox News or Newsmax, right? He's doing a lot of bad things, especially on like foreign policy with bombing a lot of these Middle Eastern countries. He's not followed through on his promises on immigration. He's not followed through on his promise to deschedule marijuana. Decriminalize it on day one, as they say, but Kamala says we don't have the time for it. You do. He's definitely on this and on education. What he's trying to do for student loan debt on these two issues is he's actually doing what he said he was going to do.
Yeah.
And I really love even aside from the tangible stuff he's doing, like I don't know if you guys noticed it, but there's those signs that people were holding in the crowd, like USA Union Strong. They all had a union label on the bottom of it. Like this guy's printing only union label stuff, like the dark Brandon mug. It's got a union label on it. Stuff
It's
like
a lot
that.
better than Trump's branding. Or
No, exactly. And
MAGA.
right. No, absolutely.
I is you skipping all the way through that video. Like if you weren't watching live and just listening, you wouldn't be able to tell that it wasn't like an actual Biden speech, like from the start to the end. You're just cutting through like jobs.
Yeah,
jobs.
I think
I'm not joking. It just sounds like a speech you'd normally make.
I think someone said Rude Boy Crypto thought it was an AI video too, which I thought was funny that you just thought that.
I mean,
AI
he's definitely unintentionally funny in a lot of parts of his speech.
No, he's underrated for how funny he is. Like
You wouldn't know for the bad news you hear.
I don't know if he's always been that way, but I'm doubling down. Like he's funnier than Trump in a lot of ways.
I've always said Biden is a great politician. He's really good. The problem with Biden is just his age and
some of his former views, kind of holding him back.
Yeah, his form of views. Honestly, I think right now it's just his age. It's just like little silly stuff like the
Yeah.
year he was elected president.
Right.
Like the right's gonna run on that. It's just like this guy can remember when he was elected.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. It's stupid. It's silly gaffes that I don't think me and you care about, or most American people won't care about. But when you add that with a whole bunch of them, it
Yeah.
looks like okay, this guy may be
Well, I think if
one
you're
day
already
past his
critical
prime.
of him, it's a very good way to attack him. But like, it
Yeah.
just makes him more like authentic. It makes him a lot more.
No, yeah.
It makes me trust him a lot more than some person with a perfectly polished speech that's clearly written by somebody that wasn't them. Like he's just fucking riffing. He's just like, jobs. I like jobs that are good jobs.
Yeah.
And it's like, you trust him.
Hillbilly Jim Pons. Actually, that was a great point. It's a great point he countered me on. He said that anytime the right whines about Biden's age, point to at Mitch glitches. The Mitch glitch
Oh my God.
right now, it's becoming so
Right.
bad.
Well, I hate the way a lot of like mainstream Democrats are attacking Mitch McConnell because I mean the Republicans, if they're smart, could just point at Dianne Feinstein, who equally shouldn't be in office.
I
She
agree.
she is legally under a guardianship. Like she doesn't have control of her own finances, but yet she can
What?
have
Her
the same
daughter
control of
does,
her
I
own government. Right? Yes, exactly.
I didn't know that. No, wow.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, very recently she became like the her what's
See,
it called?
that's
Something of attorney. Whatever.
Yeah.
power of attorney.
Thank
But-
you.
Power of attorney. That's right.
But to me, it's like that's ridiculous. Like you're cringing onto that much power, and you can barely make financial decisions. But we're gonna ask you to make financial decisions for the country.
Yeah.
Or
I think nobody
that's
should
insane.
be able to run for office if they're older than 85.
Yeah, and who said this? I think the Republicans said this in the last debate. I think it wasn't actually no. I take it back. It was an analyst who was opining on the last debate
Yeah.
in regards to her belief that we do have age limits in America. It's called elections. I was like, that's total bullshit. It's like everyone knows that politics is all about name ID. If people see your name on the paper, they've seen your name 1,000 times, they're gonna select your name. That's the way politics works. So no one's really following it every day like we are, seeing that the fact that she cannot make decisions for herself. You're representing a whole entire state. You're a senator. You're not like a little congresswoman or congressman.
Right, and that's a whole other thing because a lot of the reason why she's still in office is because of Nancy Pelosi, and it's just because she knows that if Dianne Feinstein is removed, then a more
More progressive.
currently
More
currently
accountable.
based on what Newsom has promised, but that's why she's doing it.
Yeah, so it's insane. It's like, with a Mitch Glitz is a problem, but Dianne Feinstein is 100%, I agree with you, a problem. And Joe Biden is a problem. We need to start running more. No, I'm not saying get a 30-year-old in there like Ramaswamy, but
Unless they're good.
50. Like I'm just saying, like 50, 55, 60. It's like he's not. Come on, they're 80. It's like
Was
at
Newsom
some
like
point.
55?
I don't know how old
He's
Newsom
probably
is.
around there.
Yeah, but I'm just saying because I feel like every time we have this debate, it's always some young person saying it, and people it comes off like we're ageist. But the reality is, it's like no, it's not that. You're 80 years old. Like I wouldn't even trust you with a case of mine, just as a lawyer at 80 years old. It's like, why would I
don't
trust you to
him
make
to drive me in a
decisions?
car.
Yeah, like if you're 80, I'm gonna be very hesitant for anything that you do. And reality is we have to be more mindful of that. Like I understand that wisdom is very powerful, and have older people have that wisdom, and we should always lean on it. But at the same time, that's why it's called mentors or advisors, not people actually doing the job. So that's my 2
But
cents.
also, I mean, there's an argument that it's not wisdom doesn't like go straight up. You know what I mean? Like
of course,
there's a cutoff point where you kind of kind of lose that. And it's kind of
It's like it goes the
60,
downward
67
direction.
year old can be very wise, but like you're 89 years old. It's like,
You're
do
talking
you
about
even remember your own insight? Like,
you're talking about, like my mom calls it, being stuck in your ways.
yeah,
So that's what it is. Like when you get to a certain age, no matter what someone tells you, you're like, "This is how we did it, and this is how we're gonna do it." It just being stuck in your ways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily think there's like what someone said in the chat, what's wrong with Biden? I don't know if we're saying a lot that's like definitely negative Biden. I mean,
No.
the whole topic is like Labor Day, and so we're talking about unions and stuff like that, and we've said a lot that on unions Biden is doing better than most American presidents
Yeah.
in modern history, at least in our lifetime, right? But we can definitely do better than Joe Biden. He's definitely not my preference. He's not somebody that I would like to vote for in a Democratic primary. I think in
Yeah.
2020 I voted for Bernie in the
Yeah.
Democratic primary.
you
But
said
yeah.
you voted for Bernie.
I did in 2020. Yeah.
I wish I
But
did.
but by then I think it was already kind of settled that Joe
Yeah.
Biden had a very substantial
Yeah.
lead, and of course Mississippi carried for Joe Biden.
Of course. Yeah.
Our state Democratic Party is I'd say it's fairly conservative compared to other Democratic parties, but they do advocate for a lot of like good things like Medicaid
Yeah.
expansion.
By being a Democrat, inherently you're gonna be more labor friendly,
Right.
more public.
Yes.
Solutions. But
No, and our attorney general candidate, Greta Kemp Martin, she's been very, very good on the union messaging. She was actually endorsed by our state chapter of the AFL-CIO, and she did a whole speech there. All kinds of stuff. She's very, very, very pro union. Surprisingly, she's pro-choice. And she is challenging the attorney general who authored the case that overturned Roe v. Wade. It was our abortion law here in Mississippi that was the one that was the catalyst for that, and Lynn Fitch is the one responsible, and a lot of I think a lot of Republican women in Mississippi are pro-choice, and they don't like to just admit it. They still vote Republican. And what we think might actually happen is a lot of Republican women, the threat of not having control of their own bodies, because Lynn Fitch is going after people's like medical records as they're crossing state lines, trying to say if you go to have an abortion in a different state, you're going to like face consequences here in Mississippi, which violates states' rights, of course, but they don't care. And so basically, a lot of Republican women are going to see that and say, you know what, I think I'm going to, they're going to tell their husband, yeah, I'm voting for Republican. They're going to not tell anybody they're going to vote for Greta Kemp Martin, but they're going to do it. I think, and she might not win, of course, because of course our state is a very majority, Republican government, but we could have some more pro worker, pro union people in our state government, which is exciting.
Yeah. I mean, and that's very like I said, what I like is the fact that progressive is not a party; it's an idea, and
started off as a Republican idea.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, you have a state.
I mean, the party switch and all that, but
Yeah, of course.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, at that time, it wasn't a bifurcation of the parties. They had wings. They had progressive wings. They had economically liberal wings. Like both parties were very similar in the sense of like it was a more cultural thing. And
they still are. Both parties right now are still similar.
Yeah,
I mean,
there's hang on. There's definitely an obvious better one, out of the two. And there are people more aligned with what I say you guys and I would want on one side of the aisle than the other, obviously.
But
and there's a very real threat posed by Republican leadership and government that we need to absolutely fight as a number one goal.
We have to understand that the political divide between Democrats and Republicans are about 30% of issues. We agree on like 70% of stuff. The 30 that we disagree on is literally what we fight about every election cycle. It's the big issues like climate change and the bigger talking issues. But majority of stuff in government gets passed by like both sides mutually agreeing to it. But it's my thing is it's important that we do talk about the 30% difference because that does we are clearly different in those things. And that goes to UBI, things like climate change, things like labor rights. These are the things that I think that that's what we're discussing today, and we need to highlight that as a difference between what makes us progressive, what makes them not
Right.
progressive. But for the most part, I think we're Americans. So Americans, we have common idealisms, and that's just what we embody. How do we get there? It's kind of what we disagree on a lot of times, but the ideals are still the same. I want to go back a little bit. Um, Someone mentioned AOC should run for president. I like AOC. I think she's a champion for the progressive movement, but I would not want AOC to become president of the United States.
I would just like I think she needs a lot more experience and a lot more just a lot more things. I don't think it's the time. I think she would be a very good unifier at some point. I think maybe she would need to be. We would need to be a lot more positive towards the democratic socialist ideals.
I don't think AOC would be a good nominee for the Democrats.
I don't think she would be the best choice, but I think she would
a lot of people that I know that I consider myself close friends and allies with would disagree with me and would say like, I'm like some like Joe Manchin lover or whatever. But I mean, I really do think that there are rising stars that we could have.
Of course.
That are more electable than AOC because
I think it needs to be a progressive option, but I don't
Right.
think they need to be like the hard left of the Democratic Party necessarily.
Regardless of hang on real quick, I want to finish this point. Regardless of what AOC's political positions are, she's not as electable because of lies smeared towards her, and the propaganda behind how horrible she is and how much of a communist she is, right? But basically based on that alone, I think we probably shouldn't nominate AOC. Although I do value her presence in Congress. But that being said, I think there are rising people in the Democratic Party that could be a good nominee. People like Governor Whitmer in Michigan.
I'm not a huge proponent of Whitmer.
She's very, very likable, as much as you might not like Whitmer.
It's just a healthcare thing for me.
People like the governor of Kentucky, which I'm drinking Kentucky bourbon as
I think that would be
sort of an homage to our good I don't know if I'd say friend, but I admire his position
Andy
as
Bashir, right?
Andy Bashir. That's correct. Yeah. ANDY4KY, as they say. He's the Democratic governor of a very Republican state, which I also admire, because here in Mississippi we have a very good chance to elect Brandon Presley as governor, and he is definitely a more moderate Democrat. It is Mississippi after all, but there are some good things he wants to do, like the expansion of Medicaid. Mississippi is one of only 10 states in the entire country that hasn't expanded Medicaid. He wants to get rid of the grocery tax, which in Mississippi, if you say you're rich and like you can afford to like go to Costco or whatever, you can become exempt from the grocery tax by just buying in bulk, right? But the poor and working people of our state are paying a 7% tax on groceries. Now, a lot of the people watching the show might be, wait a second, you guys tax food and groceries here, which it's a true puzzlement, right? Because we're one of only we're one of only just a few states in the entire country that tax food and groceries, right? And we have the highest tax on groceries in the entire nation. So Brandon Presley wants to get rid of that. And Tate Reeves has decided to focus on the already reduced flat tax on income that we have. Our income is flat tax at 4%. So it's definitely unfair, right? Because they want most of the tax burden to be on poor and working folks when it doesn't need to be like that. There are things we can do which, by the way, the Republican Party in our state was caught a few years ago stealing money from the welfare fund and using it towards pet projects like a volleyball court in Southern Miss, like $1.5 million towards Tate Reese's own, personal trainer. And a lot of that facts is still, being uncovered because our Republican governor, Tate Reeves, has been obstinate and been fighting against the investigation. He fired the prosecutor that was assigned to the case. But regardless, there have still been people gone to jail for these crimes, of stealing money from or misusing welfare funds. And a few of them have been donors to Tate Reeves' campaign, and he hasn't given the money back. He still has it, even though he said he's going to get rid of it. There's no reason for him not to have given the money back, but he still hasn't done it. And so just a lot of real issues, even among Republicans. Tate Reeves is very unpopular. There was a poll done by Siena College, which is one of the most, credible polling institutions. And they said that 20% of Republican primary voters would vote for Brandon Presley in a general election versus Tate Reeves. He's the most unpopular governor in the South, the most unpopular governor that is a Republican, and just the second least popular governor in the entire country. So we have a chance to do really good things in Mississippi, like they've done up in Kentucky. But with that being said, I do have to go. So if you guys want to continue the conversation, then go for it. But I do have to go. Thank you guys for having me.
Thanks, Zach.
If you want to learn more about the Brandon Presley campaign, I don't speak on behalf of the campaign, but it's BrandonPresley.com. You can donate, stuff like that.
He's got a real chance of winning, flipping Mississippi.
Come on. We deserve better. We deserve better than that. Also, follow me on Twitter.
What do you mean? Minnesota's amazing.
Follow me on Twitter, Real Zach Britt. Follow College Dems Mississippi, just College Dems Miss, and then College Dems MSU. Follow the stuff we're doing down here, because we're making some positive change in Mississippi. I think so.
Yeah, you guys.
Thanks, guys.
All right, thanks, Zach. And we'll wrap up with that. Zach's leaving. I'm glad we went through a whole bunch of different topics, and but it was good because we got to learn a little bit more about labor and some other things. So we're gonna have another show next week. We're gonna. I think me and Seth talked about this, that we're probably gonna table the Republican debate. There's another one coming up in 3 weeks, so they're pretty much gonna say the same stuff. So we'll probably talk about the parts that we didn't talk about last time, and when we do that debate analysis. But stay tuned. We will be chiming in on some new topics next week, but not that particular topic. But stay tuned. That's all I gotta say.
Yeah, we'll give something good for everybody to see. We don't need to exhaust this debate that we've already seen. Everybody's already known about for weeks, so it's like, it's all good.
Exactly.
Well, thank you for tuning in this week. There's another great episode of Imagine More. Happy Labor Day. Enjoy I guess it's not the weekend, but enjoy your time off today with family. And we will keep everybody updated. We'll have a new episode. We'll try to get some new guests, maybe some recurring guests, and we'll keep this interesting. I'll post this video onto YouTube tomorrow, so please subscribe and share. And
we'll see you next week.
Everybody have a great night.
You too.